Hey guys, give me a moment here. I'm just catching up. Plus, I've just been driving for about 2 hours, so a little hazy. Um, no problem. Uros, this is my job. And since I couldn't make it Friday and I said I'd be here, I'm here. But yeah, we'll be rolling in a second, guys. Give me like 2 minutes. I'm just catching up on something here while we wait for people to roll into the room. Okay, guys. I guess we're going to stick to the usual format, but we'll see if we actually make it out to an hour. It's about 10:50 in the evening here in Tallinn, Estonia. Obviously, a little bit off the beaten track in terms of when we usually run this AMA, which is Fridays at 3 o'clock. But like I said, I'd be here, so I'm here. But let's get started. So let's see if we roll out to an hour. Don't know I'm going to make it, guys, but we'll give it a shot. For those of you who have never watched one of these beautiful AMAs before, we have a bit of a format we follow. So that format is market news, 10 pieces of news that have been correlated over the past week by our glorious elite team of Telegram supporters. And then I run into Kevin Explains Crypto, and I'm given some random phrase or word, and I basically explain what it means, crypto phrase or word in layman's terms. Just give it to define it, basically. Then we do a live Q&A here on YouTube, and there's Reddit questions, usually that rolled in over the past week as well, and I try to get to those if there's time. So market news first, guys. There are 10 pieces of news. I usually take a minute or less per news article, just to basically give my thoughts on each article. And it's 10:52. Let's see if we can get through this by 11:02 local time. So here we go. Number one on the list of 10: Indian regulators officially proposed total cryptocurrency ban. So yep, obviously this has been in the news for quite some time, months, that this was expected. Now it's happened. They've proposed it. Obviously, this hasn't yet been passed into law. I have said many times I think they will try an outright ban or something close to it. It will fail, and then they will basically renege and start to look to closer regulate, probably with some restrictions, but regulate the market. We'll see what actually happens. But they finally made it official. Now let's see if it actually gets pushed into law. Number two on the list of 10: Circle Ventures to Bermuda for friendlier regulatory climate. Yep. So I don't know if it's about friendlier. The problem is that I think Circle understands, being owned by a large financial institution in the U.S., that crypto will probably fall under the CFTC's guidance or guise once the regulator starts to actually move a bit faster. Everybody talks about the SEC. The SEC is about issuances and about securities and issuance of securities and sometimes non-securities, or the definition of securities. When you talk about actually the tradability of non-securities, you're talking about whether they're futures, whether they're commodities, et cetera, that falls under the CFTC. And in order to have to trade these things, you need a broker dealer's license. That's roughly 20 to 25 million in net capital that's required to hold that license. And I think Circle understands that's probably where we're going. But since there's no clarity, they want to continue operations and not have an issue where tomorrow the CFTC says, guess what, you guys, you need a broker dealer license. It takes 18 months to acquire one, and until you get one, can't trade anymore. So I don't think it's something about friendlier. I think it's just finding some place that has either already shown that they've applied existing regulation to crypto, or they've tried to create some type of guidelines for crypto specifically. So, and they can get it done quickly. And that's probably why. It's not really about friendlier, it's more about um, clarity, to be quite honest. Number three on the list of 10, Coinbase quietly kills its loss-making cryptocurrency investment packages. Yeah, so they killed off these bundles that they were doing. Something like our ETCF, though. I think Coinbase is an exchange. Period. And obviously, on the institutional side, they have custody and things like that that are also starting to make them a bit of money. But in terms of Coinbase, its main thing is exchange, and its main target is basically newbies because their fees are quite high, etc. So I think because they don't do really that cross marketing between people looking for investment, people looking for this, people, they just kind of focus on this. Your first time into crypto, use us type of clientele. This just didn't make sense for them. But I think it's mostly because, yeah, they just it's kind of a big leap from newbie to invest in this more complex aggregation of crypto assets. Whereas if they were targeting people looking for alternative investments, it would be much less of a jump. But they aren't. They target that one group and they tried to leap them into something else. Didn't work out. Number four on the list of 10, Robinhood raises 323 million in Series E funding. All right, yeah. So Robinhood, I don't know what their valuation is at this point. It's definitely in the billions. Anybody that doesn't know, Robinhood, based in the U.S., basically alternative investment platform for retail investors. They put on crypto trading a while back, even though it's not their focus. Um, they've raised a lot of money, and they were just raised another 323 million. So what it shows now, they're not a crypto focused entity. Crypto is a very small piece of their ecosystem. They're more an alternative investment, multi-asset trading app. Um, but when I usually describe CoinMetro to any investor or even someone who's not an investor, I say Coinbase, Robinhood, and Revolut rolled into one. So this just shows that those type of ideas to investors, at least traditional investors, still quite hot. Number five, unless list of 10, German regulator greenlights 280 million Ethereum real estate bond. Yeah. Again, these are, for the most part, still lazy solutions. This is a bond that is tokenized after issuance, not a natively tokenized bond, meaning that it's a regular, they went through the same process as they would to create a normal bond. It sits in a CSD. It sits in custody. It is settled at a CSD, and they have a tokenized act rights into that bond. Lazy solution. Doesn't really mean anything for crypto, to be quite honest, or tokenization in general. Hope eventually we get there. This really is meaningless, to be quite honest. Number six on the list of 10, New York regulators designate new division to license crypto businesses. Was inevitable. Initially with their bit license, they had licensed like 2 or 3 companies in 3 or 4 years. Now they've licensed about 20. And when you have that type of oversight, you need to make sure that even without licensing more entities, that the licensed entities are actually operating as they should be. You need a division. So there you go. It's not so much because they're now opening their eyes. They've already been looking at crypto for a long time. Now they just have too much oversight to deal with, and rather than another division look over these businesses, they'd rather have a division that focuses on crypto businesses licensed under that bit license regime. Makes sense. Number seven on the list of 10, Venezuela's currency continues to suffer from runaway inflation, which estimate claims has reached 10 million%, leading citizens to resort to alternative means of storing value. Yeah, well, there's, let's say, microchasms around the world where your Bitcoin maximalists will say, well, this is a perfect use case for Bitcoin. And I think they're probably right, though it's not really the use case I think we should be focusing on. However, there's always going to be countries that get hit with runaway inflation. Zimbabwe was the big story maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. Iraq was another one after the Iraqi dinar used to be worth, I think every Iraqi dinar was worth $7 before the first Gulf War. And then sometime during the second Gulf War, it was worth, I don't know, a fraction of a penny. And then Zimbabwe, and now, Venezuela. And there's always a country around the world that hits with this. This is what happens when your monetary policy is, let's say, less than adequate for your country, especially when you have, dictators running the country and state-owned businesses. but it does show you that um, had Bitcoin or had decentralization not really been a core aspect of Bitcoin, Bitcoin probably wouldn't exist. And because of that decentralization, it's able to help these people. It's able to help these people move money out of the country and not get killed by this inflation. So definitely thumbs up there for crypto in general. But I'm not sure it's the best use case to tout because these use cases don't last forever. Number 8 on a list of 10, Germany crypto businesses will require a BaFin license next year. Well, that took a while, but that makes sense. Why shouldn't they? Again, we're not creating new assets here, guys. We're creating an asset delivery vehicle. It's technology to deliver assets. It's not a new asset. So why do we should not need new licensing, and we shouldn't be we're going around existing licensing. We have licenses that can apply to pretty much everything we're doing, and now they're finally starting to realize they should apply them. So again, I always said it was inevitable. Well, here you go. One of the largest regulators in Europe now, the light bulb came on. And once BaFin's light bulb comes on, the UK's light bulb comes on, everybody else's light bulb will come on as well. Even New York State, with their division now. There you go. It's happening, and it's going to start happening faster and faster and faster. Number 9 on a list of 10, Philippines-based Union Bank completes blockchain remittance pilot. We've had a lot of banks already use blockchain. We've had people use it. Ripple's been being used as well between banks for remittances. There's been JP Morgan coin, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Blockchain for remittance is almost a marriage made in heaven. Um, at some point, all the remittance services will probably be on some form of blockchain to automate things and reduce costs and speed things up a bit. So, great. I think once we and the Philippines is one of the biggest remittance capitals of the world, so good place to start with remittances, I guess. But again, inevitable for any type of the internet dematerialized things, and it was basically the internet's all about data. Okay, the blockchain decentralizes things, and it's about the transfer not of data but of value. So transfer of value and remittance, it's almost a synonym, so it makes sense. Number 10 on a list of 10, crypto loans firm left thousands of users financial data exposed. Like I said, even when I've said this a million times, even when people are generally trying to do the right thing, when they're not forced to apply protocols and there's no oversight of those protocols, meaning there's little to no regulation, things like this will happen. Even when there is regulation, things like this happen. But no matter, even if you can argue that they happen much less in terms of the amount of times they happen than they happen in unregulated markets. Why? Because in unregulated markets, you do what you want. Regulated markets, you may get away with something for a while. Eventually, you're going to get caught. And when you do get caught, because there's regulation in place, there's monetary fines and possibly jail time and things like that that eventually correct things. And whatever let's say the bad people need to get smarter, and that takes a bit of time. And anyway, at the end of the day, you get a cleaner market. So we need more. We don't need more regulation, and we need applied regulation, and it's happening, as we've seen in a few of those different market news stories here. All right, next up on the list, this is Kevin Explains Crypto. So this week's Kevin Explains Crypto term is dust transactions. So I've never actually heard of dust transactions, though there's dust attacks and then simply just dust. So I'm going to assume here now dust just means basically kind of like the smallest unit or a very small amount of crypto. For example, I think with Bitcoin, one Satoshi I think is 8 decimal places. I think out or eight zeros out from the decimal. That's a Satoshi. So basically, dust would be anywhere from a 1 to maybe a few hundred Satoshi would be considered dust. It's usually too small for people to notice, especially when they're looking at the converted rate inside their account. So rather than looking at Bitcoin, looking at the USD value or the Euro value, and it's basically still zero, they don't really notice that. That's dust, just really small amounts of crypto. Now, there's instances where because of the way trading platforms work, you may get partial fills and things like that, and you're left with dust on an account that you can't trade because it's below the minimum trade amount. So, maybe that's what we're referring to here with dust transactions, or the basically just moving very, very small amounts of crypto between two people or two wallets. But that's I think that's what we're talking about here. So that's what a dust transaction is, at least to me. Okay, let's jump into the live Q&A here, guys. Let's see. So let me scroll up. When Moon from John K. Hey, John. When Moon. So I think I've always usually have fun with this one, right? Like I don't know, buy a rocket, then you get to the moon, right? Easy enough. Um, but today I'm going to be a little more. I don't know. I'm gonna be a little more direct on this question, and I'll tie it in with the next one, which is what news from jet fuel. So I'm gonna hit you guys with the news that I talked about, because I'm sure a lot of people are sitting around waiting for that one. So, as lots of people know, if you read our newsletters and you're in Telegram, maybe ever, you've probably seen that the last couple AMAs as well. I've mentioned that we're in the process here of dealing with the Montenegro CMA, the Capital Market Authority, the regulator in Montenegro. If you don't know where Montenegro is, it's in the Balkans. If you don't know where that is, ask President Trump. He'll tell you it's the Baltics. But basically, if you're the Balkans are essentially, let's say, Eastern Europe, Southern Eastern Europe, I guess is the maybe a good way to describe it. You're talking about Croatia, Kosovo, Serbia, basically old Yugoslavia, which is partially Montenegro, Macedonia, Albania, all these countries. So anyway, we were there for Futurama, or I was there for Futurama a few weeks ago. I had the chance meeting, sorry, with the president of the Capital Market Authority, and I talked about CoinMetro. I talked about the MTF, Multilateral Trading Facility, basically trading STOs for lack. Everybody that knows me knows I hate that acronym, but I'll just use it so people know what I'm talking about. We'll make it quick here. And the fact that, and talking about this CSD, this Central Securities Depository, which is required to settle all these STO transactions. And, Montenegro, after privatization, so after they became, basically their own country, and things were privatized, they had a boom where their capital market expanded fast and furious. And it brought in lots of money into the country. Real estate started to boom, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now that's all kind of cooled down, and they're basically looking for a way to get more capital into their financial markets again. And the president of the CMA, the Capital Markets Authority, the regulator in Montenegro, was extremely happy to talk about this and invited me back. So I was there on Thursday and Friday, sat down with the board of the Capital Markets Authority, and also had meetings with the guys that were attempting to draft out, or starting to draft out, the framework for their own sandbox. A regulatory sandbox, is essentially a place where you can test a regulated product without being regulated. So you're given an exemption, even though the service that you're offering or the business you're in is regulated. Because it's innovative and because it's new and because it's different, they give you basically the permission to operate that regulated in a production, in live, in production, not in demo, not in beta version, but actual live production version of this regulated product or service inside of this kind of wireframe where you're able to operate in a certain manner. So the first day on the meeting on Thursday, we sat down. We basically went through their draft. We helped them edit it. When I say we, I mean myself and the partner that I have on this CSD project, who's a local lawyer here, expert in regulation and financial law. So we did that. We went through the draft. We helped them align it a bit more. We told them things we didn't like about it, things we did like about it, things we thought that were bad for the country in terms of if they accepted certain types of businesses or certain types of applicants, the application process, etc. So we did that the first day. The second day we came back, we fine-tuned everything. And basically we came to the agreement that CoinMetro would be the first applicant into that sandbox. And that the CSD, as soon as we had an MVP, which would be in about 4 months, will be probably, maybe not the second, but maybe the second applicant, if not maybe the third, depending on if somebody else comes out of the woodwork between now and then. But more importantly, to that, and maybe not more importantly, but very important aside from that, is that The Montenegro CMA, Capital Market Authority, does not need parliamentary approval in order to get this sandbox into law. They simply need a board vote. And we met the board, and the board will vote yes. So basically, in 1 to 2 weeks from today, that sandbox will be in place. CoinMetro will start the process to get into the sandbox, and probably 15 to 30 days after it is in law, CoinMetro will be able to operate within that sandbox as an MTF and list tokenized securities, STOs, regulated tokenized products. That's big news, guys. It's big news because I don't know anyone else who's doing that. Now, while I know that there's platforms out there saying that they're STO markets, they're not. They're not because they don't operate within the full scope of regulation. And two, not only because there's no CSD, let's say in Europe, but outside of that, they only allow you, for the most part, investors that already have access to private equity rounds, which are accredited investors. This will be open to retail, basically globally, through reverse solicitation. So it's big. It's big. It's quite the precedent. And on top of that, we met with a local bank that's willing to bank us through the sandbox, as well as bank CoinMetro in Estonia, and they have USD. So it's a way for us to get USD funding into CoinMetro here in Estonia, as well as in the sandbox, and perhaps eventually in a licensed entity in Montenegro as well, depending on how we go. The idea of the sandbox is we can port that sandbox once we've done it into Europe. We can port that sandbox into Latin America. We can port that sandbox into Asia and test. And we have places that we're talking with now in Asia. We have places that we're talking with in Latin America. And we have places we're currently looking. Now there's Lithuania, there's UK, there may be Estonia if they adopt a sandbox as well. So relatively big news, guys. The banking in and of itself is pretty big. But outside of that, the fact that this sandbox is going to be, we'll have the ability to basically put our foot in the door in 1 to 2 weeks is big, is monstrous, I would say. When everybody asks about volumes and things like that, understand, yes, we have a lot of competition in terms of retail. I buy Bitcoin, I buy Ethereum. There's lots of people that do that. When you talk about fiat, not as much competition, but still there are fiat on ramps. When you talk about regulated, tokenized equity, debt, convertibles, etc., where you can pay in fiat and invest and gain access to retail liquidity and institutional liquidity on a global scale, there is no competition. Zero, zilch, nada. So big news. As far as funding, guys, next week there will be news. This week, I have news just saying that one of the big tickets I talked about or have been talking about for the last maybe 2 AMAs is this close from coming over the side. It's really just a matter of fine tuning a few things, and it'll be in. It's not 5 million, but it's a rather decent percentage of what we're raising, and it'll give us the ability to move a bit faster. And that, with moving a bit faster, combined with the sandbox, combined with the CSD, combined with this ecosystem we're building, it's going to be good. And on top of that, we're moving very quickly right now with the launch of TAM, tokenized asset management. We're moving quickly with margin posting and a revamp of the menu system, header system, and the Go dashboard and the trade platform. All that stuff is actually moving quite nice, quite quickly, and it's moving forward. And everything's starting to line up, guys. Things take time. I know I've said that a million times. People get tired of hearing that shit. I understand it. And the soon trademarked soon Metro and all this good stuff. I'm gonna get a T-shirt that says soon Metro at some point, guys. I'll debut that at one time. Maybe we'll give a few of those away once I have it made. But we're kind of, from all sides, we're starting to get lots of traction. We're really starting to dig in, and eventually it's going to be an explosion. We're getting there. We're getting close. So let's see. Chris Summers asking, hello, Kevin, was the XCM ICO just a crowdfunding? One time when you've been cornered with similar questions, you said we were just contributors and you have no obligation toward us. By dumping your XCM on us, you are still milking this cow to operate your business, and you steer your business towards trading tokenized securities that will cover your expenses. Is there any financial benefit? Geez, hold on. Is there any financial benefit for us, the ICO contributors? No marketing. We were here just to support your dream. Okay, so I'll break this down from the top here. So, was it just crowdfunding? Legally speaking, yes, you are contributors. There's no such thing as an investor in a utility token ICO. It's just the term cannot be applied because applying the term investor would mean that you weren't investing in an ICO that had a utility token. You were investing, or you were sorry, you weren't putting money up or contributing into an ICO with utility token. You were investing in an investment, which inherently would kind of push us toward being a security, meaning the token is a security, which it's not. So it is closer. ICO with a utility token is much closer to crowdfunding than to what would be considered some type of buy-in to equity or some type of regulated product. Now, we're not dumping. You say you're dumping our XCM. Have we sold XCM? Yes, I think we've been 100% truthful about and upfront about selling XCM. Why? Well, because we've been using that XCM to pay for different things in the business to keep ourselves afloat as we go through this funding round. The alternative to that was not selling XCM, and maybe it would be slightly higher than it is now, but I don't think it would be much higher, to be quite honest, because we're very systematic when we have to sell XCM. We don't just market sell it into the book. That is not what we do, and we don't market sell everything we need and then not worry, not continue to fundraise or put in our own capital. Actually, if I told you how much of my own money that I've put in, even recently, all this travel to Montenegro, all these things, Futurama, all these things, this is me. This isn't XCM. This isn't us selling XCM. This isn't money that I even earned from CoinMetro. It has nothing to do with CoinMetro. It's my money, and it's other shareholders' money that gets put into a lot of these things. So we're not dumping XCM by any shape of the imagination. And you're asking, what financial benefit do you have? Well, the whole thing behind ICOs, to be quite honest, even though many people kind of didn't realize this because they were just worried about getting 100x, because they got lucky and because it was just a lot of hype-driven market, still is a hype-driven market. But the idea is that you believed in something and you were prepaying for access, maybe discounts, maybe whatever, onto a platform that you believed in and that you wanted to see work, kind of like a Kickstarter. Yes, crowdfunding. That's what ICOs were about. That's why the ICO bubble got so big. And that's why companies used it. That's why they didn't go down traditional routes. That's exactly what it is. But what are the benefits? Well, you can see all the benefits. We built the white paper. We still, those the benefits are still there. That means discounts on trading. That means access to certain things. That airdrop family. Obviously, some of those things haven't come to fruition yet because we're still building the products. When we build the products, in comes that utility. And we are adding, we will, and we have, and we will continue to add more utility for that token. And obviously, as we build the business, the way markets work, the token will become more valuable. That's just the way markets work. It's more valuable than it was at a low. It hasn't surpassed the ICO price, but we are still building. So that's kind of normal. We haven't done any marketing, and to be honest, for a company that hasn't really done any marketing in terms of paid marketing, and we've done quite well. I got to be honest. Our retention rate, the amount of new clients coming in, our current cost per client is generally nothing. So at the end of the day, I think I don't know what you would be waiting for. What should we be providing? I guess would be my question to you. What do you want from us? What do you think that you would like to see from us? Obviously, we didn't offer equity. We didn't offer revenue share. We didn't offer any of those things because it would have made it a security. And that's why those things weren't offered. And they were never offered. So unless you read the wrong white paper, you wouldn't assume they were offered either. Bjorn hasn't asked yet. Okay, so I already talked about funding, Crispy. Development news, public API, margin posting. Yep, API, as said, after TAM margin posting go live. Last week, that was 4 to 6 weeks, I think, roughly. So now it's 3 to 5. But yeah, everything, we really are starting to pick up pace on several things. I've seen GUIs now for margin posting. I think we're version 3, 4, 5 now. I've seen GUIs for Tokenized asset management moving quite quickly now as well. I've now seen new menu systems for the entire Go dashboard and all the platforms. We've been discussing those actually for the last few days. I've seen some new mock-ups for the trade platform. Things are moving. Things are generally moving. Guys are working 7 days a week. Remember, guys, it's been a pretty much a shoestring budget. And I'll remind everybody, especially Chris, who seems to think that I'm, living the dream here off of CoinMetro's back. My salary at CoinMetro is 768 euros a month. And the only reason I pay myself a salary is because to live here, to have a visa, I need to make a minimum salary. But last month, I think I probably spent 25,000 euros of my own money uh, directly for CoinMetro. And whether that was going around promoting it, whether that was going to Montenegro, whether that was talking with regulators, whatever it was my money. And that money did not derive from CoinMetro, did not derive from the token sale, did not derive from XCM. It derived from me, from other businesses, other investments, other ways that I've made money over the years. That's where it came from. So, just everybody here is working more than they should be. There's dedication in this office and outside of this office in the team. And even from our contributors, even from Telegram supporters, there's lots of dedication here, guys. There's lots of time being spent. There's lots of people working into the wee hours of the morning, and not for my dream or however it was put there. I don't. It's a collective. It's a collective. Yeah, I own a lot of XCM, sure, and I'm a majority shareholder. Yep. But the my goals are aligned with your goals. I want XCM to increase in price. Of course I do. Why wouldn't I want that? I want CoinMetro to be successful. Anybody that holds a token should want the same thing. We all want the same thing. And, it's not me secretly here, benefiting where everybody else isn't. That's just not how it works. To really do something powerful in life takes time, guys. I know everybody thinks that things happen overnight because you never hear about companies until they're big. And then all of a sudden they're huge. Like, wow, this company, I just heard about this last year and now it's huge. I've had people, 10 years ago tell me, wow, Starbucks, that's an amazing story. Starbucks has been around for 40 years, guys. They became big in the last 15, but for 25 years, nobody knew who they were except to live in Seattle, maybe. Get my point. So anyway, moving on. Before I go on too many tangents here, if you think any ICO has any obligation towards you, you should exit crypto. Yep, Saul kicking in the wise. If you think any investment should have an obligation towards you, you should quit investing. Well, if you invest in something with equity, they have an obligation basically for dividends. Doesn't mean they actually have to pay you dividends, by the way, but if they do, they have an obligation to pay you that dividend, right? Open a savings account. Okay, so yeah, by the way, the word investment literally involves risk. Without risk, there is no investment. With an investment, there is always risk. But anyway, that has nothing to do with an ICO, by the way. Completely different. I like the official wall. This is an old industry or factory building, right? John, yeah. This was a paper factory, actually. It's about the building was built in 1921, 1919, 1929, 1929. So it's roughly, well, not roughly, it's basically 90 years old. This is my little office inside our much bigger office. You can see a little bit out towards that door. That's part of the office over there. You don't see much of it, but anyway, 3 stories. But yeah, it's rather cool space. It's an old paper mill. Yep, you are the true followers, Jet Fuel. So I appreciate everybody being here and asking questions and whatever. I mean, it's wherever you are in the world, I don't know, but it's 11:30 p.m. here. So John has no sports teams he can support, so he supports us. I appreciate that. Hold on, I just lost my step here. It's only 4 p.m. Well, crispy, still 4 p.m. on a Saturday. So thanks, bro. Appreciate it. And Jet Fuel got stood up by a date. Yeah, maybe she's watching the AMA, bro. Maybe she's maybe decided to stay home and pop some popcorn and watch good old Kevin talk for an hour and just decided, Jet Fuel, that guy, he can wait. Maybe that's what it is. Thank you, Jet Fuel. Thank you. Appreciate that. Preferred date. So the Jinka is asking, "Hey Kevin, are the people working at CM allowed to own trade XCM?" We've actually given a bonus to our employees in XCM. They are allowed to trade it, but there are restrictions. So one, they aren't allowed to, let's say, openly trade around news. If there are specific news that's known inside the company that hasn't been released yet, trading cannot happen around that news before it's released. We don't allow them to trade over a certain veracity or velocity. Limits are done based on how much they can actually buy or sell, etc. So it's very similar to what would happen in any company. You can work for a large company and you get shares. Those shares are locked in for a specific amount of time. They're vested for a bit of time. After they're vested, you have some restrictions on how you can buy, sell them while you still work for the company. Same thing applies to these tokens. Yep, CoinMetro exchange is open, John. John, doing something non-regulated in a simulated regular environment. This is legit. Who comes up with this? No, John. It's actually it's running a regulated business or service uh, inside of a regulatory sandbox. So basically, you go through a fit and proper test. The regulator has to approve what you're doing. They need to understand what you're doing. They need to understand that you understand what you're doing, and they basically ring fence you and say, look, okay, let's just give an example, right? Let's not even crypto related. Let's say you have some new system for, I don't know, electronic debit cards, like NFC payments. Okay. This would be a regulated activity, maybe e-money or something similar. You go to the regulator and say, look, I have this new system. You don't need a phone or anything. You just go up and you scan your eyeball I don't know, into this reader and you can pay for things. And the regulator goes, that's really cool. Let's see how it works. And they tell you, this is what you can do. You can issue credentials to 1,000 clients over the course of 6 months. You can do a maximum of €500 per transaction, and each client can only place, I don't know, up to 10,000 on their Retina card or whatever. And then after 6 months, we will evaluate, and you have to work within these certain parameters. And if everything works well, we'll invite you to apply for a license after 6 months. That's it. It's a regulated product inside a regulatory sandbox. So basically, a regulatory set, a rule set that means you don't need to go to get the license first. You can test your product first and then get the license. But you still have to go through a process. So they know what you're doing, you know what you're doing, et cetera, et cetera. Uros, as far as our marketing strategy goes, it will start to be mentioned. Yes. Especially once we start moving closer with the CSD, and especially once the MTF is already inside the sandbox. 100%, that will be part of our marketing strategy. News on the 33, it's actually 25 fiat now, I think, John K, that's been adjusted a bit. We're still waiting for one of the providers that provides our, let's say the partner that provided us with this, one of their providers that provides some of the APIs and the infrastructure to finish some integration so that we can semi-automate this thing. So next week I may get some news on that. But we're moving forward. Let's put it that way. I think I can't really pinpoint a date because unfortunately I'm not the one directly in contact with this provider because it's not my provider. I kind of get news indirectly, but I'll get some more news next week and we'll see. But it's moving. It is moving along. Big ticket from the Brazilian bank. Not a Brazilian bank yet. Brazilian bank would be phase two if they're interested. And no, but this is from a angel group in Latin America. What volumes do you expect the MTF CSD sandbox to bring from jet fuel? Well, that's going to be part of the limitations that we apply to ourselves inside that sandbox. We want to show that this thing works. We don't want to go too overly complex with the type of products we offer and things like that in the beginning. It doesn't make any sense because we want people to understand what it is. We want the regulator to understand. We want to show that it works. So I think we're talking about maximum maybe 2 to 5, or minimum 2, maximum 5 assets or STOs, and probably X thousand of clients that have access to those STOs initially. We will limit that. As far as volumes go, it depends. I think each issuance will probably be somewhere between 2 and maybe upwards of 8 million. And under prospectus law in the EU, for example, under 8 million, as far as the EU is concerned, it's minimum requirements in order to be able to fundraise that amount of money. Once you go over 8, the prospectus law gets much more onerous. So I think you're talking in terms of money, you're probably talking on average, let's say if it's 2 assets, 10, 5 assets, 25 million worth of raised capital or funds approximately. So we're not talking about transaction volume can be quite large because these things will be trading hands. In terms of overall volume, the size of the capital market will remain small, 25 million. Maybe it goes to 50 million at a maximum, right? So it'll be relatively small during the sandbox, but that's not the most. We're not looking for a massive revenue boost in specifically when we talk about that sandbox. It's not what the sandbox is for. The sandbox is to show regulators around the world this is how it works, this is why it's better, and this is why you should want it in your jurisdiction. That is the real goal. And when that happens, this goes from 50 million to very quickly because you start to have capital markets around the world saying, we want to try this here too, or we want to license this here. We want to move forward with this because this is something we need for our own capital market because it solves problems we've had for 30 years. um, that's that's the goal, and with that comes, volumes unheard of in crypto, unheard of. Chris saying, oh, sorry, still hold on. I think we got another. How much are you expecting? Okay, do you have a beer fridge in the office? No, I'm actually not a beer drinker myself. Not really a drinker, to be honest. Though every once in a while, I go through cycles in my life where I may, especially when you're entertaining and business development. Sometimes it's almost you're forced to, but not really a beer drinker. Though I have obviously had a few beers in my life, but no beer fridge. We do have two refrigerators, two refrigerators in the office. One on this floor, one on which would basically be the fourth and a half, fifth, sixth floor. But no beer. Actually, one of our guys, Dean, who works in finance, brews his own beer, and when he comes up with a new batch, he brings like 20, 30 bottles in the office, and then sometimes on Fridays after business hours, everybody will taste a few of his new brews or whatever. But I don't know if there's any hanging around right now. Definitely not a fridge that's dedicated to beer. Chris asking, I would like to see some marketing. Guess that after 1.5 years, we deserve this. Plenty have been built on the CM side. I think it's time to bring some people in. I agree with you, man. I want to see some marketing too, but I need to see the money before I see the marketing. We made a conscious decision with the money we do have to focus on development, to bring the products live so that when the money rolls in for marketing, we have something to market. So I agree with you. I think we all deserve that. I'm right on there. I'm right on board with you. Trust me, I'm not limiting marketing because I have some ulterior motive or plan. It's because when you have a small budget and you need to keep moving forward, there's a risk to market a product that may not be, that other people offer, for example, instead of marketing a suite of products. So we focused on development. And I think, to be honest, that was the right decision. But I agree with you. We need to see some marketing, and it's coming. Also, the head of marketing has left. Kind of bad news from my end. Yeah, look, and I think I mentioned this, and I don't want to. Obviously, his reasons for leaving are his reasons. So whether he wants to come here and talk about that, that's up to him. And I wish Alex the best, if he's listening. But there are obviously we've been fundraising, guys. That gets stressful, not just on me, not just on the company, but it gets stressful on the people that work here. And in order to know that maybe next month fundraising takes a bit more time, or people start to and no matter how much there's communication, after 6, 7, 8 months of this, guys, it's quite straining. Imagine, yeah, you guys hold an XCM, it's frustrating, but imagine you work here, and this is your paycheck, right? And while you believe in the company, everything, well, what happens if for a month or two something happens and payments can't be made on time? Or what happens if we have to get a 30% reduction in salary? I'm not saying those things will happen, and I don't think they will. And it would the first thing I always think about, to be quite honest, guys, making sure my guys are paid, because I know they're dedicated and I know they're here, and by them coming here and knowing that we've been fundraising means that they're truly supporting, the vision. And I think that deserves a round of applause, but it also deserves to be paid on time, right? So I think it wasn't I don't think, and I'm being honest here, that Alex left for any other reason, that he was just has now two kids, new kid that just came out, and pressure with that, and I know how that works, and just stability. It's for stability. It wasn't about anything else, because he was busy, guys. Man, we don't pay for marketing, but trust me, he was doing a lot of stuff and he was enjoying what he was doing. So anyway, we're already interviewing people. We actually already talked to a few people. We will bring somebody in. We will get somebody in. We're actually hiring 2 or 3 new people in different places around the office here. So um, people leave places, guys. People leave from senior positions at every major company, and not because they don't like it or they don't believe in it. That's just the way life works, guys. You're not married to a job, right? You're at a job until probably maybe there's a better opportunity and you take it. And I'm never, and I've employed a lot of people in my life, and I'm never upset when someone goes to a better, what they believe is a better opportunity. If they go to a worse one, then I'm pissed. I'm like, what would the guy leave for? Why would he go from here to, you know, cook burgers at McDonald's? That would piss me off. But that's not what he did. He went on to something he felt was better, something that was broadening his horizons and something he was interested in. Awesome. News on the debit cards, updates on being able to list coins without LHV. News on debit cards. We're waiting on the little templates from the printing company for the cards so that we can submit our designs. Probably get those next week. I would say we're still about at least 10 weeks out from having the first debit cards roll out, at least 10 to 12. List coins with LHV. No, we got a response back from the 3 listings we sent them. They asked for some additional information. Our head of legal, Ingvar, was working on that. We're going to submit that to them Monday, and we will re-ask again. The main guy that's behind this, the main guy that tracks this, is out till August 5th. However, second in charge, this woman responded with the information about these 3 listings, and we will ask her next week about how the self-assessment guideline is going. All right, from the UK. Hi, Paul. Cryptos, if I understand you correct, you said that CoinMetro will soon have a unique framework, especially to on-ramp institutional investors from different countries. Not exactly, and you said that in contrast to a fiat exchange, this will be something that makes CoinMetro unique. But what is your opinion about LGO Group, who are focusing on institutional investors? Do you think they're a serious competitor to CoinMetro? What is your genuine opinion about LGO? All right, completely different thing. It's what I'm saying is that we will be testing a complete tokenized security capital market infrastructure, from front end being the MTF on CoinMetro, the tradability of assets, to back end, which is basically this a CSD, a central securities depository, which is basically settlement, something that's missing from the current market, that doesn't even exist yet for tokenized securities. What I'm saying is we are looking to create the first complete capital market infrastructure. And we're not creating it for institutions, we're creating it for retail. However, institutions obviously are going to have access. What I'm saying is and LGO, for example, there's a lot of guys targeting institutions, and they're doing, whatever, OTC, or they're doing futures, or they're trying to make some type of ETN or whatever, electronically traded note, based on crypto, because they think, well, these guys don't want to get wallets, but if they can trade a future, if they can trade a note that's already on their Bloomberg terminal, then they're going to do it. And that's somewhat correct. They definitely don't want to get wallets, but they were a long way from actually having the infrastructure needed to support institutional clients like they need to be supported. And we can't, in terms of regulated assets, we don't have any infrastructure to support anything. That's where the CSD comes in. And the CSD will have regional partners that will become primary markets in different regions. The primary market for Europe will be CoinMetro. That means any regulated asset that needs to be housed at a CSD will, and that liquidity will have to come through CoinMetro, meaning any other exchange that wants to operate in Europe with Europe issued assets, or assets issued outside of Europe and selling to European clients, we'll have to pull that liquidity from CoinMetro. So at the end of the day, directly or indirectly, we will be exposed to a massive amount of clientele. Is this through the sandbox? Not necessarily. But once that ecosystem is pushed forward and we actually go to get licensed, this is what happens. We would be, let's say, the NASDAQ of the tokenized exchange world, the tokenized security world. You said that STO platform is open globally through reverse solicitation. Can you please explain this a bit more? So reverse solicitation basically means that we can't go out and directly solicit. So in Montenegro, I can't go on the internet and put an ad that says, hey, guys in X country, come on over and issue an STO or buy an STO. Can't do that. However, we can do general advertising out of Montenegro on the internet that everyone in the world may see. And if they come and say, hey, you guys are in Montenegro, I'm in country X, can I become a client? And we say, sure. And someone says, can I become an issuer? I have an STO I'd like to issue. We say, sure, you can apply. And that's it. You can bring on people from not every country. Obviously, there's still, FAFT and FATF, sorry, and OFAC sanctions and blah, blah, blah. There's still an onboarding process, KYC, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But basically from almost, let's say globally, you can accept clients through reverse solicitation. Why? Oh boy. Well. Okay, you wouldn't. This is from John. Wouldn't listing XCM to other exchanges help XCM get funding instead of having to get new private investors? I don't think it makes sense yet. Doesn't make sense yet. It may make sense at some point. I think now, for the reasons I've already mentioned many times, it doesn't make any sense. CoinMetro isn't well known enough and doesn't have enough volume on its own exchange in order to push that to multiple exchanges. One, most of these exchanges only have volumes on tokens that get market made, and they market make them by mainly wash trading and front running. And I'm not a fan of that, and I would not allow my token, I don't care how it push price, to be wash traded and front run, because I think it's one, immoral, and aside from being immoral, it's illegal. So I'm not for that. Now, in the future, once we create a larger market, I don't think we will need to do it. Once we have this CSD infrastructure, to be honest, it won't be needed. It won't be needed. And at that point, we will probably have exchanges listing XCM without our approval anyway. But the CSD would start to control how that liquidity is actually handled between exchanges. So actually, they probably would need our approval. But case to say, I don't think it actually provides any benefit yet. Hi, Kevin. Great news. My question is, who are you looking for in your next round of hiring? We're looking at marketing. We're looking at compliance. We're looking at finance, even support. So, yeah, those are specifics. We're talking about CMO. We're talking about copywriting. We're talking about in finance, guys that that can monitor transactions and things like that 24/7. And support, we're talking about support, basically. All right, guys, we're getting close to an hour here. I didn't think I was going to last. We got about 5 minutes to go. The Jinka, will XCM tied every transaction that are done will be done in the CM platform and sandboxes? Sandboxes, not sure. Platforms, yes. And once the sandbox becomes a platform, then yes, obviously. So with the sandbox, if it's a test bed, can you really only have a few assets in a certain volume? If it's successful, what happens then? Do you have to shut it down and get a real license? No. You basically, if we get licensed in the same jurisdiction, we would be able to extend that sandbox as we went through the licensing process and then leave it licensed. That doesn't mean that if we were licensed there, we would continue to operate from there. We would if it made sense. If it doesn't make sense, we would probably acquire the license so that in the interim, while we were applying elsewhere, we would be able to continue to operate. So we would structure this in a way that there wouldn't be some type of major disruption to business. You're welcome, John, for answering your questions. Pavel, cool. Thanks for joining in. When to burn the correct mint amount? When sorry, so yeah, yeah, the burn to correct is we're basically, I think we've already gotten everything vaulted up. I know that there was one or two other things that needed to happen, and I think we were waiting. Actually, one of those things might be something to do with CMC, Coin Market Cap. I'm not sure, but it will happen. I don't have an exact date, but it will happen. It's going to happen, and it'll happen. You guys are like this soon. But I'll get an update for that. Tag me in Telegram and ask me. Let's say early next week, and I'll come back to you with an answer. And CMC listing. So, David, the token has been listed, but it has no data because we're waiting for the exchange to be listed, and we're the only place that has the data, right? So we submitted, I think, the last bits and pieces to CMC last week that they asked us for, and they've been pretty responsive. So I expect a response from them this week. See if they need more data. See if they don't. But let's see what happens. But I think we'll get at least a response this week. So next AMA, either we're already listed or there will be more information to talk about. APIs will come, like I said before, after TAM and margin posting, 3 to 5 weeks from now. That's also when XCM fees will be applied. XCM will be directly applied to all fees as well. Fees on the CSD, no way to do that. Two separate companies, but the CSD will, because CoinMetro will be the primary market in Europe and will also be a secondary market, but the primary market, there will be significant amount of volume that'll feed from the CSD. So indirectly, yes, on lots of that volume, but the CSD is a separate entity and it will hold separate licensing. And to have that type of agreement between a primary market participant and a CSD would be a major conflict of interest. New website. Also, I saw mock-ups. Very, very close, guys. I think first 2 weeks of August is probably more or less when we're probably going to see it push live. But I'll get an update on that as well. Tag me over the weekend. Tag me, well, it's already the weekend, I guess. Tag me tomorrow or the next day, and I'll see what I can do about getting you some information. All right, guys. I think we didn't get to the Reddit questions. We're 58 minutes, 59 minutes in. IEO news. IEO news will happen right around August 15th. August 1st, you're going to get a tidbit of news about that spread across social media. Well, the first couple of days of August, you get a little tidbit of that spread across social media. On the 15th, you'll get a major news announcement. So it's coming for IEOs. Well, it's not an IEO, but our version of what everybody calls an IEO. Okay, guys, really glad you guys showed up. I'm glad I made it an hour. Thank you guys for coming here on Saturday. Thanks for all the great questions. I like thoughtful questions. I don't care if they're, whatever side of the fence they're on. I like thoughtful questions. So thanks, Chris, for throwing questions out there. Thanks everybody else for throwing their questions out there. Appreciate you guys being here. Appreciate you guys spending time with me on a Saturday evening, afternoon, morning, whatever it is for you. And see you guys in Telegram. Have a safe weekend. Spend time with friends and family. Don't look at the markets. As I always say, buy low, XCM. Why not? Yeah, have a great weekend. Thanks, guys, and appreciate it. Wait. Okay, we got Violet Most. Everybody wants to throw in that question right at the end. It's like fucking awesome. With most tokens being vested in August, Oliver and Telegram mentioned that there might be some good news released around this time and counteract any sell pressure. Any details on this? Well, I think the news that's been released is massive. Whether people actually digest it is one thing, but it's massive. Creating a capital market infrastructure and now being basically ushered into a sandbox in a country that basically uses European directives for their own regulation, which allows us then to port that sandboxed regulatory, let's say, licensing around Europe as well. It's huge. It's huge, guys. It's huge. Anyway, there's always good news coming out of CoinMetro, guys. Whether it gets stampeded over by some FUD every now and again, I think we've had a lot of good news flowing out since the beginning of the year, and we'll continue to have good news. I don't expect to see a huge move once those vested tokens come out. Initially, when there were the tokens that were available, which was all tokens except for the tokens that are coming out to be vested. So more tokens that will come out in this vesting. Remember, this vesting is only from 3 and 5 cents. We only sold 50 million of those things, and we've already released some. So it's not a huge amount of tokens that are coming out onto the market. I don't expect there really to be much movement. We will see some downward pressure probably, but I bet you, there's inside the book, when you look at the book, as we go down, the buying pressure gets quite adequate. It starts to increase. So I don't expect to see huge waves in any given direction just based on the vesting alone. All right, David, I already answered that a bit earlier. I really got to run, but we did get news on the three. They asked for more information. That information will go to them Monday, and we're waiting next week to get information on this self-guidance, I can't even talk anymore. We're waiting on this self-assessment guideline. So hopefully we'll get some news on that next week. But on the three we submitted, we did get feedback finally Thursday or Friday maybe it was even Friday last week. And I think Monday or Tuesday at the latest, we will come back and answer their questions. So anyway, guys, thanks again. Hour and 2 minutes. We did it. Thanks, guys. See you soon. See you until over the weekend, over the rest of the weekend. And have a good one, guys. Cheers.